After the staggering amount of support on my Gwen Stacy video essay, many requested a look at Miles, which I thought would be more interesting if we analysed his relationship with his parents, one deeply rooted in parallel with almost every other Spidey as they struggle with the burden. Hi, I'm Adrian from EmberNexus, and to further understand this relationship Miles has, we'll need to take a deep dive into his surrounding relationships too, such as with Gwen and her dad, and Miles and Uncle Aaron. I really hope you enjoy. We first need to establish Rio and Jeff's expectations of Miles, which is to say, very high, evidenced by him being enrolled into Brooklyn Vision's Academy, a school much more prestigious than the local one he was previously attending. And this isn't without good reason. Miles proved indirectly that he could score 100% on a 50-50 multiple choice test. I say indirectly, but he really just straight up proved it. The chance he got 0 was 7.89 times 10 to the power of -31. He is clearly a smart kid, and his parents have recognized that and only want what's best for him. And putting him in this school does give him better opportunities to do greater things in life than what he would otherwise receive. As brought up more in Across the Spider-Verse rather than Into the Spider-Verse, his parents have sacrificed a lot to put him in a comfortable position. Not just them, but his extended family too. They want him to make the most out of the opportunities he's been provided with, to focus on his education and work hard to ensure a successful future. This pressures him into feeling a massive weight which he finds overwhelming with the fast pace of everything. As we all have at some point in our lives, whether from family, friends, teachers, co-workers, he feels pressured to conform to this ideal version of himself everyone else has made up for him, what they expect the perfect him to be. And especially at a young age and a vulnerable stage in his life at that, it results in him becoming more uncertain in himself, frustrated that he can't live up to the expectations that have been placed on him by those around him. As we delve into Miles' relationship with his parents, one key figure stands out, his Uncle Aaron. During times of hardship, Miles always gravitated towards him. The expectations he placed on Miles weren't as great, he encouraged him to stay true to himself, pursuing his passions, and the interactions they had together were enjoyable for the both of them. Aaron was a mentor for Miles' real identity, and Peter a mentor for his secret identity. Aaron is able to provide support at a more personable level to his nephew because he underwent similar experiences in his own life. These are the struggles that make his guidance and assistance so invaluable, and the reason behind why this relationship means so much to him. His parents don't understand him on the level his uncle does. Aaron's laid-back attitude provides Miles with a sense of liberation which allows him to again focus on his more creative side, but explore an identity that falls outside of societal expectations in his prestigious and strict school, and societal expectations of him just being a kid, not Spider-Man. Miles finds solace in the companionship of his uncle, a feeling not yet experienced with his mother or father to such an extent. It's also worth mentioning a deleted scene brought to my attention from the comments by Mutant Cacti between Miles and Peter B. Parker from Into the Spider-Verse. This will also be relevant later on when I speak more about his mum, but Peter is consoling Miles and trying to give him advice.
There's your problem right there. You can't think about saving the whole world. You have to think about saving one person, Miles. You just think about someone you love.
Which is honestly really good advice and something I would personally recommend to others. I won't get into it right now, but this advice simplifies the problem and makes it much more manageable by focusing on a single individual that you really care about. That person then becomes a motivator for what you want to achieve and to take on issues which would otherwise feel overwhelming.
My mom, and my uncle, and my dad.
In that order?
Miles' order for who he would choose is something that only reinforces the relationship dynamics we've spoken about and will become more prominent in Across the Spider-Verse. Over the duration of the film, Aaron and Miles' dynamic changes rather dramatically. In a set of events following him being metaphorically and physically knocked down, Miles makes his way to Aaron's apartment, and this is key to his development and understanding of the world. Initially, Miles had Peter telling him that being Spider-Man is not all it's cracked up to be, and there'll be difficult things he'll have to deal with. Miles was mostly dismissive of this as Peter hadn't built up that relationship of trust with him, more similar to his parents, making it harder for him to fully grasp the weight of Spider-Man's responsibilities. But when he finds out that Prowler is his uncle, he experiences a massive hit of realization, but also one of betrayal he's felt in so many other relationships in his life. It makes his job as Spider-Man much more real in a way he hadn't experienced before. This revelation, as deep as it is something we unfortunately don't get to spend a lot of time exploring prior to Aaron's death soon after, which also greatly affects Miles. His uncle was someone he could go to in times of need and he trusted him. The security Miles had is gone in an instant and it further complicates the struggles he was already undergoing. The conversation Aaron has with Miles right before he dies is arguably what saves Miles the most. Before the encounter at May's house, Miles runs in stammering out an explanation as to how his uncle was just trying to kill him. And the way that this is reversed with the ultimate sacrifice of Aaron letting himself be killed is an act that truly shows how much Miles meant to him. I think it's especially significant that Miles really didn't care that much about Aaron being the Prowler. All things considered, there was still love and respect for him as he was dying. He just didn't want his uncle to get mixed up in all this, and Aaron is only disappointed in himself. As we also find out in Across the Spider-Verse, this was a canon event, destined to happen in one way or another. Aaron's death also affects Miles in a more indirect way too. Aaron was Jeff's brother, and it hurts him catastrophically to see him dead. There is so much regret in his voice and actions about letting his relationship with his brother become so strained, and rewinding back to this moment especially, you know that he would give anything to bring him back to try and repair that. This makes Jeff reflect on the relationship he had with his brother, and he finds himself feeling like the same thing is happening with Miles. They're drifting apart. And this heart-to-heart talk forces something out of Jeff which we all knew from the outside, but not something Miles knew on the inside. He's proud. It's something I'm sure many of us can relate to at some point in our lives, where you might know something deep down, but it takes someone else to acknowledge it for you to accept it. Jeff's message to Miles is powerful in a very personal way that conveys the raw emotions of what he's feeling. He made the mistake of not being there for Aaron, and he doesn't want to repeat that with Miles. My biggest thought as to why Aaron was so good at being there for Miles and encouraging him to pursue what he wanted to do with that spark is because it never happened to him. You'll notice that the things you want but never get are always what you're best at doing. Are you a really good listener for other people's problems? You may feel as if you don't have someone who would listen to you when you need it. It's all because we know how much it hurts and we don't want someone else to feel that same way, so we make sure we're that person we would have wanted for someone else. It follows very closely to the idea of being the person you wished you always had. I don't want to go too far into this next scene, but Jeff's vulnerability and words motivate Miles to help him understand that his parents would do anything to help him, and he is not alone in his struggles. It leads him to being able to control his powers and leads to the leap of faith scene. And you'll notice that all of Miles' closest mentors are right there alongside him to encourage him.
I see this spark in you. It's amazing.
Our family doesn't run from things.
You would.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
What's up, danger?
In the beginning scenes introducing us back to Miles in Across the Spider-Verse, he asks how much longer he can keep lying to his parents about who he really is. Shown to us is almost his ideal version of how the events would play out if he told them. Personally, I believe that, as subtle as it is, the decision for Miles not to tell them but to show them is an important choice which foreshadows how they'll find out in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Once he finally arrives at the meeting to discuss his future and missing classes, it's evident there's some strain between him and his parents, as this is something very important to them which he doesn't seem to be taking as seriously by not turning up early. I can't speak personally on this, but I'm sure it is everything to parents to watch their child or children grow up and take a place in the real world, hence why this meeting means so much to Jeff and Rio even if it doesn't directly affect both of them. His parents even seem somewhat willing to go along with having a story, even if they don't morally align with it in order to give him a better opportunity. Miles pointing out,
Having a story at all seems gross.
Your name is Miles Morales.
Correct.
that is until Rio realizes he'll be an hour drive away.
In New Jersey? No, that's too far.
New Jersey's too far?
Miles' rebuttal to this is completely logical and is even based on what they said in the first movie about why they were sending him to Vision's Academy. They sent him there to do something great, and now that he's trying to take full advantage of it, there seems to be a problem. Spider-Man offers to talk to Jeff, and the first thing to come out of the conversation is how Jeff feels like no matter what he does, someone always thinks he's messing it up. Miles echoes this, saying he knows the feeling. Spider-Man follows this up with asking about Miles, to which Jeff responds with knowing that Miles is smart, but he thinks he's making bad decisions. But really, the most important element to come out of all of this is that Jeff says
I just don't want to lose him.
his concern and hardship on his son is out of love. His parents only want the best for him and are unsure in how best to support Miles. Spider-Man then says,
Maybe get off the kid's ass.
I'm sorry, what?
What? What?
What?
I don't know.
which ties into Miles' arc about doing his own thing. Miles is conveying how he feels limited by his parents and they need to let him do what he wants. Right before making it onto the roof for his dad's promotional party, he has to go up a stairwell. This sequence of shots is similar in significance to the one involving Gwen slipping, which I covered in my Gwen Stacy video. We've got a lot to talk about for something seemingly so small. Miles has to change from his Spider-Man outfit into his regular clothes. A parallel regarding this, reversing both ideas, also comes up later in the film. Whilst he's using his Spider-Man abilities and still wearing the costume, he moves rhythmically and elegantly throughout the stairwell. He even uses the walls to better position himself and makes use of them to set up for the next most efficient change, but once he starts trying to fit his shoes, he bumps into the hand railing. This is different to him deliberately bumping into the wall at the beginning, which he used to position himself to place the cakes down gently and stop himself from spinning more. As I mentioned in my Gwen video essay, shoes are personal and carry the identity of those who own them. The object symbolizing his deepest, most inner self is what trips him up. There is an internal conflict he is facing that his Spider-Man self is able to forget. Following this, he then does a massive leap to the top, snatching the boxes on the way up, and he again accidentally bumps into the wall. Let's take notice of how he's moving up the stairs, an uphill journey of life lessons and challenges. As Spider-Man, he feels more comfortable and can adeptly handle taking on several at a time, but once he begins to revert to his more private life self, he begins tripping up and even becoming unsure on the platforms where there aren't any challenges. The smaller shortcuts in life earlier on were okay as he handled them in his own style, still taking on the challenge, only using the available resources differently. Here he attempts to completely skip the lessons and he is immediately left being backed into a wall. He's forced to face the upcoming tasks where, notice he is both Spider-Man and Miles. This could be reminiscent of his difficulties within Spider Society coming up, and his later encounter with Miguel where he tackles his objections with both of his identities playing a major role in the conversation. The interaction Miles has with his parents following this sequence metaphorically demonstrates his struggles communicating to his parents via the message on the cakes. Everything he says comes out jumbled and has a different meaning to what he really meant to say, also enforced shortly after.
Alright, whatever. Whatever?
And when his parents question why he wasn't at the party on time, he defaults to those he's most comfortable with, his two closest friends. After getting grounded, Miles raises an objection that they don't understand. He wants to tell them why, but at the moment he only feels comfortable raising that there is something wrong, not what specifically is wrong, hence why it sounds like an excuse. Admittedly, Rio and Jeff, in my opinion, did the right thing to come and see Miles privately to speak about what was just brought up before. Rio seeing a sweater that wasn't his gave her an insight into what Miles had said earlier about having other friends he hung out with, and is the compelling reason I believe she let him go after Gwen when we see them all later. At the clock tower, Gwen relays her own experience with telling her father about her secret identity, albeit I imagine the situation Miles would tell his parents in would be slightly different to hers. Nevertheless, she is an important figure in his life and an opinion he won't take lightly, influencing his actions towards the end of the film. Miles' parents interrupt him and Gwen getting friendly and do the classic embarrass your kid in front of their crush routine. While I'm sure this was awkward for Miles, this may have been the best thing not just for him, but also Gwen. This interaction contributes to arguably two of the most important scenes in the film, one of which immediately continues this scene and the second nearing the very end of the movie, which we'll cover later when Gwen re-enters Miles' room. Rio stays behind to talk with Miles, but it's more geared in the direction of, I'm here for you when you need me. She assures him that he can tell her anything by creating an atmosphere of trust. It furthers what their relationship is built on, communication. And this is why it's such a sensitive topic for Miles. It feels wrong not to tell her. Miles does play with the idea of telling his mum, but in a culmination of his chat with Gwen and own self-growth, he decides to be selfless. Rather than shift the attention to something he's been struggling with, he apologizes for an action he knows hurt both of his parents, not being there. And his apology isn't something half-baked, which is something his mum recognizes, and she decides to push aside her previous assumptions of Gwen and tells him to go with her. This reciprocating action on Rio's side enhances the idea of a better relationship with his mum than his dad, a concept brought up in the deleted scene mentioned earlier. Truly, Rio is only concerned for Miles. When Miles is struggling to find the words to say what he means, she allows him the silence to think and only demonstrates her willingness to support and listen to him even more. When she fixes him, her words speak of self-love and to instill a confidence in him which no one else can shake. Something that I truly appreciate are the boundaries also set. While Rio is indeed very supportive of him and brings a vast amount of understanding, she insists that he comes home on time with a normal, nice cake. Rio is far more well equipped for Miles to grow up and be the man he's so quickly becoming than Jeff, and it really shows in how she can recognize these moments in which Miles so dearly clings to. Even during periods of disagreement, there is understanding and fairness. By the end of the conversation, she is encouraging him to go off even though just earlier he was grounded for multiple months. She saw something special in Miles when he was around Gwen. Here, I want to briefly interject with something mentioned to me in regards to Gwen's relationship with her dad. In a similar vein to what Rio did, making a decision she thought would make her son the happiest, which it most certainly was, George attempts to do the same thing for Gwen following Peter's death. Unlike what Rio has just done with Miles, talking and listening to him, George knows that Gwen is unhappy, but rather than comforting her and being there for her to talk to him, he instead tries to close the widening distance between them on his own. Building a bridge between two places isn't going to work if both sides haven't agreed. He has solely made the decision that catching Spider-Woman is the solution to the problem, which has resulted in a wider gap between him and his daughter, thus enforcing his desire to catch Spider-Woman even more. It's a positive feedback loop that will keep feeding into itself. Luna also mentions the reason George defaulted to being a cop rather than a dad in the situation following Gwen revealing her identity was that he was so sure in his own thinking he'd never considered an alternative perspective where he could be wrong. All of his thinking came from a good place, his heart, wanting only for his daughter to be happy again, yet he's unable to process how wrong he really was. A big thank you to Luna if you're watching for sharing this in the comments. The idea of Miles' parents' love is a concept constantly used subtly throughout the film. I feel as though it'd be more worthwhile to skip ahead in the movie, however, to more prominent examples. In the moments leading up to meeting Miguel, Hobie questions why Miles wants to be a part of Spider Society and why he couldn't just make his own watch, saying,
But you got a nice setup, huh? Nice parents.
Miles' response is, they just want what's best for me, as any parent, or even as anyone, should. His recognition of their intent is a point worth mentioning as it draws attention to his past interactions with them both. While they are in disagreement about some topics, Miles sees these as opportunities to speak his thoughts alongside his parents and a chance to better explain what he wants to them. Hobie replies with,
That's a bloody shame. Why? Because you're not ready for everybody else.
In this clip we cut to where we can see Gwen's face side-eyeing him, even though neither of them can see it. I see this as concern for Miles mixed with being fed up with Hobie. She may be thinking he's right and knows Miles might not be ready for this, or just thinks he's being too harsh. Either way, Hobie demonstrates a very valid point and even materializes it in the real world by blocking Miles' path, which he then has to push through. Hobie follows this up by mentioning the whole point of being Spider-Man is the independence. While he may be slightly biased because he knows what might happen when he finally gets to talk to Miguel, his words still have a valuable lesson within them. You need to be comfortable with yourself before you can amply apply yourself elsewhere. Miles, right now, is here for the wrong reasons. As much as Miles and Jeff do have their differences, being told that his dad is going to die because of a Canon event is something Miles doesn't stand for. This scene is part 1 of 2 where his mother's talk with him has its greatest significance. For better or worse, Miles is not ready for the real world and what it entails for his father. Nonetheless, at a base level, Miles shows solidarity with his family and that he refuses to let anything happen to them. While not exactly the same, we deepen how badly George's actions hurt Gwen. I want to say in full that I wholeheartedly disagree with the idea that she'd be okay with him dying and only appears to seem unnerved by it because she is 1. More mature and is more willing to accept harsh truths, and 2. Because she's been manipulated. It's also worth mentioning that she likely put up a fight when it was first revealed to her. On the train, Miguel digs deep into Miles' psyche to throw him off. Rio's talk with Miles has its greatest effect here as everything she mentioned is challenged and Miles has to fight against Miguel not just physically, but mentally. Hobie's point of his parents protecting him too much and not being ready for the world also plays a role here, but contradictory to that, it maybe shows he is ready. The talk with his mum barricaded his mind from those who would tell him he doesn't belong there. Everything that Rio mentioned to him earlier about feeling loved, belonging, and where he came from are all challenged whilst he's at Spider Society, especially so when Miguel is telling him that
You're not supposed to be Spider-Man! If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived! Instead, he died, saving you!
Make sure he never forgets where he came from.
This line is what drives Miles to create his plan around luring everyone away from the clubhouse, so he could return home using the go-home machine like his mother had reminded him of earlier. The scene of Miles telling his mum about his superhero identity is one built on love, vulnerability, and trust. Both of them still hold very similar, if not identical, roles to the talk they shared earlier in the movie. Miles feels guilt and like he's let others down, and Rio is supportive and willing to listen. It starts with Miles confessing that he's been lying to her, something even mentioned during the meeting discussing him missing classes. As we know, him keeping this secret generates a heavy emotional burden, as it does for every spider person. Next, he addresses still wanting to be loved, even though Rio told him earlier that he should.
He never doubts that he's loved. Making sure he's loved.
Even after her reassurance before at the party, he's still terrified by the idea of being rejected by those closest to him, his family.
I know you know I've been lying to you. It's because I thought if you knew, you wouldn't love me the same.
More than anything, he wants her to love him no matter what, a feeling that can resonate within all of us. Miles plays off his mother's line about
those big fancy places he's gonna be in
by mentioning,
and then I went out there and now I'm not afraid of anything.
He wanted to go out and be at these places, but it was still something he had to adapt to and something he as an individual has grown from. Miles reiterates that his mum has to promise, a callback to his mum telling him the same thing.
You gotta promise, Miles.
I promise. You gotta promise nothing's gonna change.
Papa, I will always love you.
You gotta promise.
Such reassurance is almost a necessity for an event like this and boosts a comforting feeling of acceptance. As I mentioned in my Gwen video, I think that Gwen overhearing his parents talk about her is crucial. To hear how good Miles felt around her, how comfortable he was, and how much he really valued her is the security she needed to keep going. I really don't want to overlap with my other videos, so here's a timestamp if you'd like to quickly check out that part specifically and then come back to this one. Once again brought to my attention through the comments, I think we need to talk about her hair. In the shot where Gwen is listening to his parents, we see the left side of her face peeking through the opening in the door. First off, we need to establish that her hair is longer on the left side, and the right side is the one that was shaved following their first encounter. But in Into the Spider-Verse, Dad correctly points out that the left side was naturally longer anyway and came in front of her face more. Metaphorically, we have to interpret her hair and face like it's a different part of her. During the sequence where she first meets Miles, it's down in front of her and she's not being truthful about everything. She is hiding a part of herself from him, and this even works out later on when she reveals who she really is, revealing a new side to herself. If we look at the clock tower scene in Across the Spider-Verse, we see this concept being used again. Her hair changes subtly whilst talking about her father to when she then brings her attention to the spot, before then tying it up and leaving a piece down at the front. Here, she is preparing herself to be more open to speaking emotionally and revealing more of herself to him. But there's still a small barrier there she's left so she's not completely out of her comfort zone. This changes, however, when she walks around to the other side of the platform to be upside down. She's most willing to communicate and be open about vulnerable topics when she feels comfortable as Spider-Woman. As I mentioned in my Gwen video, I think the idea of them being upside down and having the world appear the right and then the wrong way up is incredibly symbolic of how the characters feel. Going back to the conversation she's hearing, her hair is completely out of the way and she is again shown to be upside down. There's an uneasiness to this, but she's allowing herself to be vulnerable by once again peeking her left side. Once she leaves his room, we see her hair come back down across her face in conjunction with his jacket she's now wearing, something I also covered quite deeply in that previous video. It shows the two very different sides she is willing to let herself feel around Jeff and Rio based on whether she can be seen, something also done in the party scene, hiding behind that side of her hair as she turns to leave. In the final scene where his parents are mentioned, Miles is talking to his Prowler self on Earth 42. He refers to Jeff as
Our dad.
but the Prowler says,
Your dad.
This places all of the responsibility surrounding Jeff surviving on our Miles, something we will likely see him mentally combat in Beyond the Spider-Verse as he endures emotional turmoil similar to that of Jeff when he had to come to terms that Aaron had been killed. Regret and anguish are sure to be at the forefront of his mind and controlling his actions the next time we see him. I really hope I've been able to uncover the relationship Rio and Jeff have with Miles as well as his uncle Aaron across these films and partially with Gwen. There's so much to dive into with these characters and I'm looking forward as always to hearing your ideas in the comments. And if there's anything else you'd like me to cover, please do let me know. A big thank you for watching until the end and for the immense amount of support on my Gwen Stacy video essay. I'm so proud to be able to say that my favourite video has surpassed 80,000 views and it means an incredible amount to me to read all the incredible support left in the comments. I'm so glad I've been able to share my ideas with you all and pick out things some of you said you hadn't noticed. I made a YouTube short about the following about 2 weeks ago, but I said I wanted to build a map art of Gwen in Minecraft if the original video surpassed 30,000 views as a bit of a celebration, so please let me know if you'd be interested in a video on that. It'll have more character analysis entwined, so don't worry. But thank you again for watching and for your support. If you enjoyed, I would really appreciate you leaving a like and subscribing, maybe even dropping a comment. It helps out a ton, but until next time, I'll catch you in the next one.